Are you going to apologize like Cory Booker
Apologize
has called
for what?
Cory Booker's called for it.
Cory should apologize. He knows better. There's not a racist bone in my body. I've been involved in civil rights my whole career.
You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Even call centers, which rushed overseas in the hundreds of thousands. How many times you get the call? I'd like to talk to you about your credit card.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
Biden is under fire this evening on comments he made about working alongside segregationist senators in the past.
Biden recalling his early Senate career, bringing up two segregationist senators, Herman Talmadge and James Eastland, who called African Americans an inferior race. I was in a caucus with James O. Eastland, Biden said. He never called me boy. He always called me son. At least there was some civility. We got things done. We didn't agree on much of anything. We got things done.
I think the two-party system, although my Democratic colleagues don't like me saying this, I think the two-party system is good for the South and good for the Negro, good for the black in the South. Other than the fact that they still call me boy, I think they've changed their mind a little bit.
And by the way, what you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community.
It's that old school white male.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
The blinders have been taken off. They've all of a sudden seen a hell of a lot clearer. They've seen, geez, the reason I was able to stay sequestered in my home is because some black woman was able to stack the grocery shelf.
When may I expect dinner, Beulah?
Presently, Mr. Herrick. Presently.
What would the noontime be without the classic Leave It to Beulah? Beulah, who's always in the kitchen,
but never seems to know what.
30 seconds or less. What kind of a chance would a northeastern liberal like Joe Biden stand in the South if you were running in Democratic primaries against Southerners like Mark Warner and John Edwards?
Better than anybody else. And you don't know my state. My state was a slave state. My state is a border state. My state is the 8th largest black population in the country. My state is anything from a northeast liberal state.
It's that old school white male.
Choosing Joe to be my vice president was one of the best decisions I ever made.
Not the first sort of mainstream African American who was articulate and bright and clean and nice looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
My son is Attorney General a year in Iraq, came back, and that's one of the things that he finds was most in need. When he was over there in Iraq for a year, people would come to him and talk about what was happening to them at home in terms of foreclosures, in terms of bad loans that were these Shylocks who took advantage of these women and men.
Back from Mumbai to go meet with President Xi in China, I stopped in Singapore to meet with a guy named Lee Kuan Yew, who most foreign policy experts around the world say is the wisest man in the Orient.
There's not a racist bone in my body.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
We already have a nigger mayor, and we don't need any more nigger big shots.
I learned a lot, and I learned that, and Corn Pop was a bad dude.
If Haiti just quietly sunk into the Caribbean or rose up 300 feet, it wouldn't matter a whole lot. Is it because blacks are involved in Haiti?
It was old media that got him in trouble. Personal comments he made about another White House hopeful, Senator Barack Obama.
I mean, you got the first sort of mainstream African American who was articulate and bright and clean and a nice looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
He's going
a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to see.
Take a look at my record, man. I have a record that is second to none. The NAACP has endorsed me every time I've run. I mean, come on. Take a look at the record.
Come on, baby. Let's investigate. Yeah.
Joe has a terrible history in the black community, and everybody just loves him because he's the fluffy old guy.
Former Vice President Joe Biden, he's run for president twice before, unsuccessfully. He's never before been the front runner. Now that he is towering over all the other declared Democratic candidates, his almost 5 decades in public life are getting some real scrutiny. On top of that list, his record on civil rights during his younger days as a U.S. Senator. CNN's Jeff Zeleny has exclusively obtained some letters written by Biden himself.
Joe Biden is coming back as a solo act.
I'm ready to go.
With his long record facing a new look under the spotlight of the 2020 campaign.
Gentlemen and ladies of the Senate.
One chapter receiving fresh scrutiny comes from his earliest years in the Senate, when he strongly opposed mandatory school busing. It was designed to achieve integration and a more equitable education. What's less known is how he followed the lead of some of the Senate's most fervent segregationists. In a series of never-before-published letters reviewed by CNN, the strength of Biden's opposition to busing comes into sharper focus. On March 25, 1977, Biden wrote, "My bill strikes at the heart of the injustice of court-ordered busing. It prohibits the federal courts from disrupting our educational system." Biden sought and received support from Mississippi Senator James Eastland, the Democratic chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and a leading symbol of Southern resistance to desegregation. He frequently spoke of blacks as, quote, an inferior race. Eastland and others were partners on several of Biden's anti-busing bills. On June 30th, 1977, Biden wrote, "Dear Mr. Chairman, I want you to know that I very much appreciate your help during this week's committee meeting in attempting to bring my anti-busing legislation to a vote." Then in 1978, Biden again asked Eastland to put his anti-busing bill before the full Senate, writing, "Your participation in floor debate would be welcome." Ronnie Dunn is a professor at Cleveland State University who co-wrote the book Boycotts, Busing, and Beyond.
Those letters I find somewhat surprising given Senator Biden's or Vice President Biden's current position and potential candidacy for the presidency and his position as a liberal. Those are issues that he's obviously going to have to answer for.
You said surprising. Surprising in what way?
Well, the fact that he would solicit the support of staunch segregationists, James Eastland as well as Jesse Helms, introducing legislation as opposing busing at that time.